This right here is darn near a perfect hi-fi product. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the SMSL AL200. If you are new here, please consider subscribing. We have over 740 videos. 95% of those or more are on products under $600. Like today's product, which is $260. I do this for a living, and when I get more subscribers, I get more stuff sent in. I get more sponsors, which allows me to make more content. So please subscribe and like this video. The SMSL AL200. It's a speaker amp, it's a DAC, and it's a headphone amp. And it uses an amp chipset that I've never heard before. And let me tell you something, this thing has blown me away. This comes in at about 4 pounds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but compared to other amplifiers, other Class D amplifiers that have an internal DAC, even have an internal headphone amp, this thing is a literal beast compared to those. This actually feels like a real product. Not to say that those other products aren't real. They are, and they sound really good. But this one has some heft to it. This utilizes the MA5332MS. It's the Mirus chipset from Infineon. Infineon has made a ton of awesome amp chips that have been utilized in a lot of amps. The 12070, I think, was used in dozens of amps. I've never heard this one before, and I can't wait to hear more because it sounds really good. Claims to put out 165 watts into 2 channels at 4 ohms, 85 watts times 2 into 8 ohms. I don't know the total harmonic distortion, if that's at 0.1, at 1, at 10%. Don't know if that's RMS or peak. Only thing I know is what's on the screen. But what I will say is I had the ELAC BS41, which is not an easy speaker to drive, playing comfortably without distortion at 90 dB. Now, I was only about 3 feet away, but if I can get 90 dB at 3 feet, chances are I'm going to be just fine on any speaker in probably just about any room. This is utilizing the Cirrus Logic CS43131 DAC/headphone chipset. This is the same chipset that's used in the SMSL M300 SE, which I just reviewed, and I was really impressed by. And it comes in at about $116. I'd never seen a DAC/headphone amp chip utilized before, well, in any DAC headphone amps. Same one is in here, and it sounds just as good in the AL200 as it did in the M300 SE. Uses an XMOS XU316 processor, which supports DSD 256 and PCM. Also uses Japan's JRC electronic volume control chip, NJW 1194, which gives you accurate volume control, accurate volume control and low distortion. Supports MQA through the USB connection. Also supports MQA CD, just like the M300 SE. Internal power supply, so you're not going to have to change bricks to get the most out of this amplifier. Out of the box, you just plug in the IEC cord and plug it into the wall. They say that this chipset, the amp chipset in here, puts off not a lot of heat, so they don't need heat sinks, and it takes up a smaller footprint. Comes with 7 EQ presets and tone controls, and it includes my favorite SMSL EQ setting, SDB, Sierra Delta Bravo. So you have 7 of them, and they actually sound pretty good. On the older Infineon chips, some of these EQs were really heavy-handed, but on this one, they sound pretty well implemented. You have direct, which is flat, tone, SDB, bass, super bass. I would stay away from super bass. It wasn't great. Rock was okay. Soft was okay. Clear, a little bit much on top. So all of these EQ settings were actually usable except for E4 and E7, super bass and clear. Otherwise, they sound pretty good. SDB is kind of like a loudness button. Your mileage may vary, but this is the best implementation of preset EQ settings I've seen or heard on an SMSL product before. Also has 5 PCM filters for your DAC. I usually don't hear a huge difference between filter roll-offs when it comes to the sound on DACs. But they're there. You can check them out if you want to. Comes with the ubiquitous SMSL remote control, which is not terrible, and it works. So there's nothing to really complain about, especially at $260. What's on the front and the back? On the front, it's pretty self-explanatory. You have a headphone, a 6.35 millimeter headphone jack here, display, volume control. The cool thing about this product, though, is this brushed finish. It looks very nice. This is a bit of a trapezoid, so it doesn't have squared off ends. Looks very nice. Fingerprints on here. It looks very nice, though. On the back, you have the IEC connector speaker binding post right here. Optical input, USB input, coaxial input, and then you actually have a line input. So this takes 1 analog input, 3 digital inputs, coaxial, optical, USB. And it has Bluetooth. But who needs Bluetooth, right? Let's talk about how it sounds. Well, the headphone amp sounds almost identical to the M300 SE, if not identical, because it has the same DAC/headphone amp chipset. There could be some differences because of the power supply, but I didn't directly A/B them. It was good enough. However, it would not run the Dan Clark Aeon RT closeback. This is a 13 ohm headphone. It ran them, but if you wanted to get any type of volume, it started to distort around the 20. So the volume span starts out, and then as you get it closer to 0, it gets louder. About -20 into the negative teens, these fell apart. Other headphones, though, like the Hi-Fi Man Edition XS, were just fine. I got them louder than I needed to listen to them. So keep in mind, this headphone amp in here is only going to take you so far, and super hard to drive, super low impedance headphones like the Dan Clark are probably not going to work off the AL200 from SMSL. Speaker pairings. I mentioned the ELAC BS41. Super hard to drive speaker. Low impedance, low sensitivity. It does make a lot of bass, but the reason why it makes a lot of bass is because the tweeter efficiency is squished down so much. So you need something with some gumption. You need a power amp that has a bit, well, power. And the AL200 drove them as good as I've heard on anything, maybe other than the A1 monoblocks from Emotiva or the DR1 super monoblocks from Emotiva. Basically, this thing finally rivals the AB current capabilities. Like, this feels like it's got so much on reserve for big bass hits. Listening to My Name is Mud by Primus. Lot of bass in that song. Obviously, Les Claypool plays the bass, and he's probably one of the best bassists in the world. The ability for this to articulately reproduce the quick bass notes was really stunning. And at $260, I think it's exceptional, if not the best amp I've heard under $300 when it comes to bass. As far as air, I was listening to the internal DAC, so it wasn't like I was listening just to the amp. Because when you have an integrated amplifier, it's kind of difficult to separate things out. Airy, very dynamic. Instruments are cleanly defined. And frankly, this may be the best pairing I've had with the ELAC BS41s from a smaller footprint style of an amplifier. The V3 from Fozzy Audio is awesome. Drives these really well. The BT20A Pro drives them really well. The AO7 Pro from IEMA drives them really well. There's a lot of amplifiers that drive this BS41 well, but they all pale in comparison to the AL200. I think what surprised me the most is just there was no veiling. There's no smearing of the sound. And this thing plays loud. Like, I honestly expected this to top out maybe at 80 to 85 dB, even in close proximity. And when it was pushing 90, The speaker was going to run out before the AL200 ran out. And usually it's the exact opposite. Usually I'm pushing amps to the point of clipping and the speaker is doing just fine. But you can start to hear the distortion creep in around that 85 to 95 dB area. This playing clean, clear 90 dB SPL, which is loud. What are my final thoughts? Final thoughts on the AL200 from SMSL. This is a flawless device at the price point. At $260, I honestly don't think you're going to get anything better. And this fills a void because there was nothing between the $150 range and then the $350 range for something like the Yamaha AS301. This is going to embarrass a lot of higher priced products, and I cannot wait to do some more A/B comparisons with higher end products. There's no subwoofer out though. The display there's nothing spectacular about the display. It's very simple, but it's also simple to read and somewhat simple to control though. You're gonna have to go through the menu system a few times before you can figure out how to change everything. The cool thing about this amplifier, I did not use tone controls once. I used the baked in EQs, but I did not feel the need to use tone controls at all on this amplifier. This is a real winner. The only thing that someone's going to complain about on this amplifier, I think, there's no subwoofer out. And someone could potentially complain about the headphone amp. But to be fair, most headphone amplifiers can't drive the Dan Clark 13 ohm Aeon closeback RTs very well anyway. If this had a subwoofer out, it would be perfect for a soundbar replacement. Perfect. Now, with that said, you could still run a subwoofer off here with a speaker level input. If your sub has a speaker level input, you can still get a subwoofer on this thing. But it doesn't have a dedicated subwoofer out. It doesn't have a dedicated preamp out either. If it had that, this would be perfect. I love the design. I love the weight. This feels like a solid product. However, I cannot comment on the longevity of this product because I haven't been using it that long. And right now, this only looks to be available from Hi-Fi Express, who sent it in to me. They didn't tell me what to say, though. When you go to their website, though, you can get it shipped from the US, but it's not on Amazon that I found, and it's also not at Apos Audio. So if you buy this, you're buying it directly from Hi-Fi Express. If you have any problems with it, chances are you're going to have to send it to China to get checked out. I hope that this comes into stock on Amazon and or Apos, because this is, like I said, almost a flawless product. Highest recommendation I can possibly give a product at $260. It is bananas what this thing sounds like. Well done, SMSL. Spectacular product. If you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night, we have Patreon-only Zooms, Patreon-only Facebook group, Patreon-only Discord server. You can also use the links in the description. Those are affiliate links, which I don't think this is actually an affiliate link. You can also buy me a cup of coffee. Down at the bottom of the video, there's a thanks button. Put some money in the tip jar, buy me a cup of coffee, but don't feel compelled to buy me anything. You can also sign up for Amazon Music, Tidal, or Rune. Links in the description. So, don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen through this awesome integrated $260 integrated amp and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.